Welcome back to our study in the two letters Paul wrote to Timothy. In our last session, we finished up the second chapter of the second letter, and so therefore we will begin in the third chapter of the second letter. The scriptures were divided up in chapter and verse to help us find topics and themes better, and also to understand when there was a slight shift in gears in the communication. And that's exactly what happens here. And so we will start in chapter 3 of the second letter to Timothy, the first verse. But realize this, that in the last days difficult times will come. For men will be lovers of self, lovers of money, boastful, arrogant, revilers, disobedient to parents, ungrateful, unholy, unloving, irreconcilable, malicious gossips, without self-control, brutal, haters of good, treacherous, reckless, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of God, holding to a form of godliness, although they have denied its power, and avoid such men as these. Well, that's pretty harsh language. He's describing a group of people who we would probably consider to be of the devil or in the enemy's camp, or people who are not Christians. What is slightly interesting about this is that it probably includes Christians too. Just because someone says they're a Christian doesn't mean they live it out. And so we see this. And it's interesting because he said difficult times will come. Well, sometimes when things are difficult, it's because we can't discern what's really going on around us. In fact, a lot of times that's because we don't know what the real truth is. And so there are people who disguise themselves, wolves in sheep clothing. And they are the ones that sometimes will look good and be living exactly like these descriptive terms have been given. We see this a lot in the media surrounding, quote, Christian television and, quote, Christian radio. That does not mean that all of those people are wicked and perverse, but many of them are. And they are there to get your money. They are there to feed false doctrines into your head, or to feed worthless doctrines into your head. And so they'll do it any way that will make you feel good and want to listen to them and support them in their false ministries. And in their private lives, they are like these people. And there are a few that aren't, but the most of them are, and that's why they're there. And we have to be careful. He says avoid these men. Know your local congregation, know your local ministers and leaders in a very personal way, where you can be beneficial to them and they can be beneficial to you in the Spirit. That's the important thing I think we can take from this, is that in our last days there is a lot of corruption. And it's not just in the obvious forms we see in government, politics, and business, but it's also in the church. We'll pick up there in our next session.